Hello, brothers and sisters. I make this video, which is very important. I don't find in the internet anything really deep about the topic of independent ministries in the SDA Church. I think the General Conference 225 just finished. Really, the only or main point everybody should talk about is this topic. Mark Finley talks about it. He does not understand it. Ted Wilson even less. And I have no brothers and sisters. If the leaders of the church don't study the topic, then what is going to be? Right? We need to know. We cannot teach false doctrines. I just saw something about Ted Wilson. That is, people. It says people criticize him, but they do the same. They say, "Don't criticize the church." But the GC does the same thing with the independent ministry. They criticize independent ministry. Who gave them authority to criticize independent ministry? We need to know there's a difference between criticizing and rebuking, right? There's two different things. Criticizing comes from my own opinion, my own human power. Rebuking comes from God. It's two different things. So when anyone says, "Do not rebuke," she's talking about humanly by my own reasoning power. But many times she talks about rebuking. So I'm putting the code. So today we're going to study the verses where Sister White seem to say no independent ministry. And then we're going to look next video, I think, about what he says. She says independent ministry. Okay, we need to do a deep dive on the topic. Most of the time they quote two verses. One of them is no new organization. And the other one topic, the other one verse they quote is no independent atoms. No new organization, no independent atoms. So we're going to study, because I see they don't know, they don't study the topic. They cannot misquote the topic and not understand even the context of the why everything. So she has about 20, 30 verses about that seem to say, when we study the Bible, we need to do the same thing. We cannot be surface reader. It's one here, one there, and we study deeply the topic. We cannot take 1-2 texts in the Bible saying, like Colossians 2, let no one judge you about Sabbath days. Colossians 3, Jesus is the beginning of creation. You see, we cannot take things out of context. We take every verse on a topic and find what the Bible really says. Much more with the spirit of prophecy, because it is 40 times bigger than the Bible. So we need 40 times more text to prove a point or to really know what the spirit of prophecy says. So let's read some of the texts. She's saying, Father God, we pray that we not understand the word, please. I pray, Father God, this issue might be fixed because this is a big problem in the church. I came in the church 25 years ago, Father God, and I see that there's a spirit of cultism. I never saw that before. It's really the spirit of cult. When we go back to the guru, we bring back the tithe to the guru only. I never saw that in the spirit of prophecy or the Bible. So we need to examine fully this topic. Also, Father God, some people on the internet that did some videos, but this not really deep. Some interviews, this brother, Amazing World Ministry, and he did little, but we can go deeper today to help us to understand this topic. And I think I don't find anything on YouTube about this topic. In the name of Jesus, please, amen. And I pray, Father God, you bring people in unity in the truth. And people might understand the leadership that they are causing persecution, they are causing heartache of the world by teaching that these people are not Adventist. It is, Father God, I don't see that in the spirit of prophecy. It is a totally false doctrine of demons, Father God. And many Adventists around the world are controlled by evil spirits to persecute other people, which really are your people that are giving the true message. Help us to understand your word, please, in the name of Jesus. Amen. So we stand first by going back in the time of Ellen G. White. So there was two offshoot movement that came, but really there was more. But when she talks about these things, about offshoots, she's mostly talking about Stanton and Stephen Smith. So let's look at it. The Marian Party, there's another one called the Messenger Party. During the mid-50s, Smith was sympathetic with the Messenger Party. And from 1860 to the Marian Party, later Church of God, Seventh-day, both of which, although Sabbatarians, were offshoot movements from the Seventh-day Adventists and were strongly opposed to revision. So there was one, it's called the Marian Party. And then there's the one, the Messenger. This one, she says, Stephen Smith had a troubled relationship with the church and subsequently allied himself to offshoot movements in opposition to Seventh-day Adventism and the visions of Ellen G. White. Then they again left the Adventist church and joined the early stages of the offshoot Marian Party, which became the Church of God Seventh-day. So here is a letter of Sister White. She gives the background. Dear brethren of the General Conference, I learned that it is proposed by some of our brethren to do away with the organization at at least of the branches of work. So she's talking to who? To the General Conference. And what's happening? Some of them, they want to dissolve the General Conference, or at least partly do away with the General Conference. No doubt, she continues, what has led them to propose this step is that in some of our organizations, the machinery has been made so complicated as really to hinder the work. This, however, is not an argument against organization, but against the perversion of it. Our numbers gradually increased. The need that was sown was a quarter of God, and He gave the increase. At first, we assembled for worship and presented the truth to those who would come near in private houses, in large kitchens, in barns, in groves, and in schoolhouses. But it was not long before we were able to build humble houses of worship. As our numbers increased, it was evident that without some form of organization, there would be great confusion and the work would be not carried forward successfully. And then she says why the organization was needful. To provide for the support of the ministry, for carrying the work in new fields, protecting churches and the ministry from unworthy members, holding church property, publication of the truth through the press, and for many other objects, the organization was indispensable. So we see, mostly the conference was made not to be like a guru, but just to organize. Yet, she says, there was strong feeling against it among our people. The first Adventists were opposed to organization, and most of the Seventh-day Adventists entertained the same ideas. I said that God's people should act wisely and leave nothing undone on their part to place the business of the church in a secure state. In some parts of the work, it is true the machinery has been made too complicated, especially as has been the case in the tract and missionary work. The multiplication of rules and regulations made it needlessly burdensome. An effort should be made to simplify the work as to avoid all needless labor and perplexity. So she's saying here, that it's mostly the General Conference was made mostly to organize. The business of our conference sessions had sometimes been burdened down with propositions and resolutions that were not at all essential and that would never have been presented if the sons and daughters of God had been working carefully and prayerfully before Him. The fewer rules and regulations that we can have, the better will be the effect at the end. MS 149. So let's look at the first quote. At the commencement of the Sabbath, Elder Farnworth preached a most gloomy discourse telling of the great wickedness and corruption in our midst, and dwelling upon the apostasies among us, and there was no light, no good cheer, no spiritual encouragement in this discourse. There was a general gloom diffused among the delegates to the conference, but the Lord gave me testimony calculated to encourage. My own soul was blessed, and light seemed to spring up amid the darkness. 393 1888. So she's saying, like, she said the elder Van Wars preached a message, and he talked about the wickedness and corruption in the church, dwelling upon the apostasies in the church. So she's saying here, it is wrong for him to say that. Is it wrong to talk about apostasy? No, she's not saying that. She said she just came after and gave a message of hope. But she's not saying. She says there was the general gloom diffused among the people, the delegates, everything, of the conference. But she's not saying it's wrong to have saying that. She just came in to cheer up. So you see, we need to be careful the way we read. Next one. You will take passages in the testimony that speak of the close approbation, of the shaking among God's people. And you will talk of a coming out from these people of a pure, holier that will arise. Now all this pleases the enemy. We should not dangerously take... So, okay, we stop here. She says, no, all this pleases the enemy. What pleases the enemy? To read the Sister White pleases the enemy? No. See, these quotes are taken out of context. Also Mark Finley article, also Ted Wilson, or the people, they take it out of context. We read carefully the spirit of prophecy the same way as the Bible. So she's not saying this it pleases the enemy to read the spirit of prophecy. Can you imagine that? Satan would be pleased for people to read Ellen G. White. No. She's saying, you read in my writings, close approbation, you read the shaking, but then she says you read of a coming out of a people of a pure, holier that will arise. So this is not true. It's a false doctrine. So this one pleases the enemy because it is a false doctrine. But some movement come and teach this one, which is not a true doctrine. You see, nobody says in Independent Ministry are all good. And Sister White never says all conferences are all good. She says that conference will burn fully and whole churches will burn. So there is no good in the conference, all good, and it is not all good in Independent Ministry. Nobody is saying that. We should not needlessly take a course that will make differences to create dissension. Yes, if the church is faithful. See, in context, many of these verses are written when the church is faithful. When the church is faithful, no need to create dissension or to make difference. If the church has the truth, we follow the church. We should not give the impression that if our particular ideas are not followed. Chaussicot talks about particular ideas. Well, better way to say it is false doctrines. If our false doctrines are not followed, it is because the ministers are lacking in comprehension, faith, and walking in darkness. Would Ellen G. White here be saying, if our particular ideas, meaning our true doctrines, our new light from God, is not followed, the ministers are lacking in comprehension? Yes, if new light is given, and ministers do not follow it, they are walking in darkness, lacking in comprehension and faith. Yes, because if it is a message from Jesus, and they reject it, Ellen G. White is not saying here it's okay for them to reject the truth. We need to be careful, brothers and sisters. Do not twist the... See? We cannot say, oh, it's okay for the people to reject the truth. No, she's not saying that. She said that if people bring false doctrines, it's okay for ministers to reject it. There are little companies continually rising who believe that God is only with a very few, the very scattered, and their influence is to tear down, scatter that which God's servant built up. So is it what saying here? It's not good to be with the very few. God is not with the very few. At the time of the flood, God was with the very few. In the time of Elijah or Ezekiel and Jeremiah, God was with the very few. Most of the time, generally, Israel was in apostasy, and he was with the very few that were faithful to God. In the time of Daniel, God was with the very few. In the time of Jesus, Jesus was with the very few. There were 12, then a little bit more. Then at the time of the Valdensi, there were a few people in the mountain. At the time of the Reformation, a few people giving the Reformation. So God was almost in all history, he was with the very few. But then she says, the influence is to tear down and scatter. Ah, yes, but when people say, oh, we're the faithful one, we're only a few, but then they tear down and scatter. They're not from God. See, rebuking is not tearing down and scatter. The rebuking is to build up. Restless minds who want to be seeing and believing something new. So these people are forcing new light when God is not giving the light. Look, the camera is working. No. Sorry, my battery died, brothers and sisters. So we are back to the topic. Let me find the verses. The problem is we don't make a study deep enough on the topic, and today people are really doing this so much to take a few verses only, and then we get out of context and we believe a lie. And the thing is that we are responsible for what we believe. If we believe something which is not true, we become a liar. We cannot do such a thing. So we have to be careful. And the best way to do, first we pray, then we read the context. We read many verses on the topic. And then we read the Greek, Hebrew in the Bible, in the case of the Bible. In the case of Ellen G. White, we study more because, like we said, her writings are 40 times larger than the Bible. We continue the verses. Like the world. So the Lord declared that the story of the past shall be rehearsed as we enter upon the closing work. Okay, this one is one of the most quoted, one of the most important one for this video. The Lord has declared that the history of the past shall be rehearsed as we enter upon the closing work. Every truth that He has given for these last days is to be proclaimed to the world. Every pillar that He has established is to be strengthened. We cannot now step off the foundation that God has established. We cannot now enter any new organization, for this would mean apostasy from the truth. Okay, what is the context? Many times this verse is quoted saying, "Don't become independent." Is it what the verse is saying, brothers and sisters? No. Look very, very carefully. The context is she's talking about the Lord declared that the story of the past shall be rehearsed. She says we have to rehearse, we have to study, we have to go back to the pioneers' history, the pillars that the church had made, and the doctrines that God gave to the beginning of the church. She's talking about the beginning of the church and the end of the church. And she's saying we have to go back to the story of the past. And then she says every truth that He has given for these last days is to be proclaimed to the world. So every truth that He has given when? In the past has to be given now. And then she says every pillar that He has established is to be strengthened. So the pillars, the foundations, the Sabbath, stranger's message, state of the dead, spirit of prophecy, etc. Then she says we cannot now step off the foundation. So which one is the foundation she's just talking about? Is the pillars and the truths that God gave to the beginning of the church. She says the history of the past, the truths at the beginning, and she talks about pillars. She says we cannot now step off the same teachings and make new teachings, she says. We cannot now enter any new organization, for that would mean apostasy from the truth. Question, where in this verse is she talking about independent or non-independent? Nowhere. She don't talk about this at all. She's talking about if we now teach new things that were not taught by the pioneers, then we teach different. We teach what they taught, and we teach different when they taught, then we are making a new organization. That's what she's teaching. Because she says, if we have to repeat the history of the past, we have to, every truth that's given for the last days is to be proclaimed. And every pillar that He has established needs to be more strong. So instead of leaving these teachings of the past, of the beginning of the Adventist church, they need to be more strong still. And then she says, if these are not taught, then this will mean the modern Adventist church would be a new organization. See? Here, nothing here. Nothing here is as any hint about being independent or non-independent. See, we cannot make something up that is not found. Let's continue. There is no need to doubt or be fearful that the work will not succeed. God is at the head of the work, and He will set everything in order. If matters need adjusting at the head of the work, God will attend to that and work to right every wrong. Let us have faith that God is going to carry the noble ship which bears the people of God safely into port. So where in this word is talking about independent, non-independent? Nowhere. She says, there is no need to doubt or be fearful that the work will not succeed. So is she talking about then she says, God is at the head of the work, and He will set everything in order. If matters need adjusting at the head of the work, God will attend to that. Question: is she saying that God will attend to what are we? If something is wrong, the same day God comes down and punish? No, it's not saying that. We saw that Noah, the world was going very wrong, and for 120 years God tried to make things right, and they were not until the flood. At the time of Jesus, people, they continued to live wickedly, the priest, until Titus in AD 70. The Middle Ages, for 1260 years, the papacy was ruling wickedly, killing people, and God did attend to that, but it took a long time. So she's not saying that God's going to fix it right away. And then she says, let us have faith that God will going to carry the noble ship that bears the people of God safely into port. So where is she saying here? He talks about the leadership of the General Conference. Nowhere. The noble ship, people assume it is the General Conference. No, it is part of it. It is a great part, the majority. See, and then the word the church. I'm studying also, to tell you the truth, the word God's storehouse in the spirit of prophecy, and also the church. Because I see here leaders saying the church, and they assume the General Conference. No, we don't see that. Ellen White is not saying that when she says the church, she means the church is the people of God. It includes the leadership, but it includes everybody. But the church does not mean the leadership. The church is not those who govern the church, and nothing to do with that. God's storehouse, the same thing. God's storehouse, you can study this morning. I did 20 verses. She's nowhere. She's saying the storehouse is the General Conference. No, she says return the tithe to the Lord and return the tithe to God. But it's a different topic. First we start with this one. Then we continue. So this one was 2 SM 390. Just a I lost my thing here. 2 SM 390. So we have to study this topic. We need to study many verses. We don't study. That's the problem. And I'm not making this up. Really, when Pastor Wilson, respectfully, and Mark Finley and John Lemakang and people, they say just a thing. Like they took the verse we just saw and say it's an independent ministry. It's nonsense. We have to read carefully. Let's continue. Again, I said, the Lord has not spoken by any messenger who calls the church that keeps the commandments of God Babylon. Yes. So see, people that assume, oh look, she says that some groups, independent group, they say Babylon, so everyone is of the independent is bad. No. Some are bad. Like we said, some independent are bad, some are good. The church conference, some are good, some are bad. She's not saying everything is bad. Some are bad, and everybody can agree with that. Thus there are tares with the wheat, and Christ said He would send His angels to first gather the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, gather the wheat into the garner. I know that the Lord loves His church. It is not to be disorganized or broken up into independent atoms. Okay, let's look at this one. We saw earlier there was two groups, the Marian party, Messenger party. At the time, there was not too many. But she's mainly talking about one of these men, I forgot the name we saw earlier in the video, and he was teaching three things. He was teaching the church in Babylon, he was teaching we dissolve the General Conference. And number 3, it says the loud cry is for people to leave the church. So these 3 teachings are false. The church is not Babylon, and the General Conference not to be disorganized. God never said that. So there's 2 extremes. One extreme is what the General Conference is doing now. Is only the conference. So it's like a cultic teaching. The Adventist church I never saw this before in my life. And the other extreme is like this man Stanton, I think his name Stanton, when he says that the General Conference needs to be 100% dissolved, and everybody around the world needs to be independent. I had a friend, she's Pentecostal, and she said we don't have organization in the non-denominational churches. But so they have some organization. But it's true that the fact that really they're scattered all over the world, they teach nonsense. So it's not a good thing for the church not to have a central body. But nowhere is Sister White saying don't have a central body. When she takes this quote here, she says, it is the church needs not to be disorganized. She's meaning about this man Stanton, who's saying everything needs to be dissolved. It's not to be 100% disorganized and 100% broken up in independent atoms. Here she's not saying that don't have independent ministry. She's saying if everybody becomes independent and everybody is all over the world scattered, it is not a good thing. Yet, an angel says most people need to become independent. We're going to see in a different video, brothers and sisters, that she says that most Seventh Adventists need to become independent, have independent ministry. They need to become self-supporting. See, I see this thing Mark Finley say on the people, the self-supporting ministries and there's independent ministry. Say, I want any one of you, if you have put in a comment, if you find this in the Spirit of Prophecy, there is no such thing, difference between independent ministry and self-supporting. It is the same thing. It's just independent people that believe the stranger's message, working directly with God. So it is not to be disorganized, 100% disorganized. It is not to be 100% broken up in the independent atoms. So there needs to be General Conference, but he should not say don't become independent. We continue. There is not the least consistency in this. There is not the least evidence that such a thing will be. Those who shall heed this false message, try to leave others, will be deceived and prepared to receive advanced delusions, and they will come to naught. You see, when people they take this text and they put it out of context, they say, "Oh, be afraid of every independent ministry." But we need to be real carefully, brothers and sisters. You can destroy, like Peter said. Some they twist the words of Paul and destroy the life with it. They twist the scriptures to their own destruction. You can twist Ellen G. White to your own destruction. He says the church is not to be 100% disorganized and say dissolve the General Conference and everybody all over the world is just in Alaska and in Chile and everything and they don't know what's going on. No, the church needs to have a General Conference. But here, and that she says it's not to be broken up, everybody become independent. No, this is not a good thing either. There is some of the members, the church pride, self-sufficiency, stubborn unbelief, and a refusing to yield the ideas, although evidence may be piled upon evidence, which makes the message of the Laodicean church applicable. So what she's talking about here, she says the Laodicean church message, what is it? It is the true testimony, it is the counsel of the true witness. So this message is for exactly the church members, the nominal, not the independent. So here she's really talking about the church members and the leaders of the church. But that will not blot out the church that it will not exist, because we saw earlier she was sending a letter to the General Conference, and some of the people in the General Conference were saying we need to dissolve the General Conference, or part of it, at least part of it. And she says no, don't dissolve everything. I want Seventh Adventist Church to be careful of you receive every new notions and claim to have new light. Very important, this one. I want every Seventh Adventist church to be careful how you receive every new notion and those who claim to have great light. See, the two persons that brought me in the church are very, very lovely. But at the beginning, I saw this, and some people, I don't know if it's them, they say, be careful of new light. You see? So I was stuck in the 28 doctrines for a long time. Because so I was like repeating Sabbath, everything is the same thing over and over again. We read other quotes from Sister White, and she says that God will send messengers out of the usual order to send messages which are totally different out of the usual thing. And then she says, much light is yet to shine forth from the book of Daniel and Revelation. I lost my thing here. So these are very important. She says, be careful, the people that bring new light. I try to find my place. This one is very important, because one of the reasons why the church is so lukewarm is because he's not studying this carefully. Yes, I found. It says, be careful to receive every new notion, or those who claim to have great light. So she's saying, don't receive new light and don't study new teachings. No. So we need to be careful, but almost every Adventist have been taught, you don't study new light and you're stuck on the 27, because receiving new light is a dangerous thing. But Sister White says, if you do not study new light by yourself, if you don't study new teachings by yourself, you're going to become a Laodicean, a very lukewarm person. And it is the state of the Adventist church today. Lukewarm, it means they, you have a pool, and the pool, the water goes back and forth like the pump, and it's not moving, it's not going anywhere, because so we are satisfied on the teachings. We don't get anything new. There's no river coming into the church. It's stagnant. The Adventist church is a stagnant body of water. She says, new teachers going to come and teach the church, and she says, many new teachings going to come from God. So study the topic when I say there's new light. The character of the work seems to be to accuse and tear down. So she's talking about people who claim to have new light, but they don't. But she's really saying they have false light. Yes, so for this, do not accept the false new light, but accept the true new light. My brother, I would say to you, be careful, go northward. So we continue. We are not going to be interrupted in meeting after meeting by those who claim to have a message to deliver. So when she says people come into meetings and they claim to have a message, so it means, do they have a true message from God? No. Would Sister White say, be careful when someone comes and they have a true message from heaven, and they come into the meeting and they interrupt people. If someone is really have a true message from heaven, and God moved the person, and it's really a message of God, then people, they have to what? They have to listen. Yes. Like if John the Baptist came in the Old Testament, would people have to listen to him? Yes. So it's not saying that if the person has a true message, do not listen to him. Then she says, he who presses himself forward into a place where he is not wanted is not doing the work of God. We are to work like soldiers in an army. We are not to step out of the ranks and begin to work in our own account. So here, number one, she's talking when the church is faithful, there is no need for that. Number two, she's saying that when people bring false doctrines and they come out and they tell people to come out, do not do that. So she's not saying don't become independent. She's not saying that at all. She's saying this guy has a false doctrine. This guy forces himself, so he has not a Christian spirit. And this guy is out there doing the work by himself. But if his teaching is trying to tear down the church. So here, no, it's not a good thing. But she's not saying in this verse, do not be independent. The present is a time of great peril to the people of God. God is leading out a people, not an individual here and there. So again, this is 2 SM 79. We go back to the context of this man Stanton who was teaching everybody, the loud cry is for you guys to leave the church, to become independent, for no reason. If the church is faithful, there is no reason to become independent. And we go back to the argument that the brother over there says that everybody needs to be independent. So that's what he's saying. God is leading a people, not an individual here and there. Is she saying that every one that God led here and there is false? So Isaiah is false, Jeremiah is false, Ezekiel is false, Daniel is false, Amos is false, Hosea is false, Daniel, Hosea, Joel is false, Malachi is false, Zechariah is false, Noah is false, he was by himself, William Miller is false, the Valencia was false, Jesus was false. No, she's not saying that. She's saying that everybody to be independent is not good, because God says organization is needful for people to be unified. He has a church on the earth, not that abides in the truth. So he says he's talking about the context here. He has a church that abides in the truth. So there is no need to be independent when the church abides in the truth. When we see not only men but young girls crying against the church, we are afraid of them. We know God has not sent them, yet they ran and all do not accept the erratic ideas and denounce our roaring against the Spirit of the Lord. So they have what? Erratic, false doctrines. So we saw earlier, not every independent ministry is good, and not every conference church is good. They have erratic ideas. Some independent ministry, they are evil. They're here to just tear down the church, and they teach, like what she says, Babylon. They are erratic ideas and false doctrines. But here, when she says that this girl and the people, they have erratic ideas, she's not saying that every independent ministry has erratic idea and is false. So again, here she says, that's what 2 SM 79. Now she says, he is leading not stray offshoots, not one here and there, but a people. So we saw the context, and she gave the letter to the General Conference, and she says, and we saw that this guy was making a track, saying the church is Babylon. Look, we continue reading. We are not to think that the chosen one of God who are trying to walk in the light compels Babylon. So she's talking about this false stray offshoot, teaching the church is Babylon, and there's not one here or there, but the people. So God is leading a people. But when they're faithful, yes, you stay. When they're not faithful, God is the one. No one should lead the church. In fact, I don't believe anyone should leave and go. But you can have independent ministry being a church member. But here she's talking especially about this group, this guy, Stanton, that was teaching the church in Babylon. And when she says he's not leading stray offshoots, not one here and there, but the people. Going back to the argument that the man was saying, the church needs to be dissolved and everybody offshoots. She's saying, no, the church is not to be stray offshoots. But is she saying here that it's not good to have offshoots or independent ministry? No, she's saying that the worldwide church cannot become stray offshoots. The word of the Lord came to Elijah. He did not seek to be the Lord's messenger, but the Lord came to him. God always has men to whom he entrusts his message. His Spirit moves upon their hearts and constrains them to speak. Stimulated by holy zeal and with the divine impulse strong upon them, they enter upon the performance of the duty without coldly calculating the consequences of speaking to the people the word which the Lord has given them. 5T 299. So we have a few more, brothers and sisters. Let me see this one. The world is filled with the strife of supremacy, the spirit of pulling away from the fellow laborers, the spirit of disorganization is in the very air we breathe. By some, the effort to establish order is regarded as dangerous, a restriction of personal liberty. Hence, to be feared as papery, the deceived souls regard it a virtue to boast of their freedom to think and act independently. They declare that they will not take any man say so, that they are amenable to no man. I have been instructed that this is Satan's special effort to lead men to feel that God is pleased to have them choose their own course, independent of the counsel of their brethren. So let's say the brethren is wicked, the church is wicked, and there's some churches that really don't teach anything good. So is she saying, well, you cannot be independent of the counsel of your brethren if the counsel is very wicked for the brethren? Is she saying follow the counsel? No, she's not saying that. So she's saying in the context that if the church is faithful, why be independent? There's no need. And some people here, they're really forcing themselves to pull away, forcing themselves to be independent for no reason. But if the brethren are wicked, she's not saying, let's say the brethren are wicked. Let's read this one again. Satan is pleased to have this band choose their own course independent of the counsel of their wicked brethren. No, that would not be good. God permits man, there was 92:5:7. God permits men to be placed in positions of responsibility when they err. He has power to correct them or remove them. Is she saying here that God removes them right away? No. But he has power. We should be careful not to take in our hands the work of judging that belongs to God. MH 484. So in my video, my channel, you can look at the video about judging. Because there's a judging by the Bible, this is okay. A judging by what society thinks is good or bad. It is no good. And when God says, do not judge, he's saying, do not judge according to the world standards. Because Jesus says, you shall know them by their fruits. When men arise, claiming to have a message from God, but instead of warring against principalities and powers, they turn the weapons of warfare against the church militant. Be afraid of them. You see, these are the verses that people, they misquote. And we see there's only about 20 verses, maybe more. It's not exhaustive. But we're going to see after that she has hundreds of verses saying to be independent. And these are taken out of context. So what she's saying here, when men arise claiming to have a message from God, so they claim to have a message, again, we saw, if they had the message, if they really had the message from God, would she say, be afraid of them? No. She would say, listen to them. When A.T. Joshua Wagner came, they were independent people. They were one here, one there. And you see, they say, listen to them. But here, when people come and they have a false message, and instead of warring against hell, they turn the weapons of warfare against the church. Oh, so what they're doing is not trying to help the church. See, in rebuking is trying to help the church. When the independent ministry, they rebuke the church, they're not trying to tear down the message of God, of the pioneers, of the Bible. No, they're trying to establish it. They're not criticizing the belief of the Adventist church. They're criticizing the modern way the church is done. See, there is nothing in the true independent ministry. There is nothing in trying to do something wrong for the church, against the church. It's establishing the doctrines that God put with the pioneers, and it's really trying to help God. And God is the one sending His people. We'll see maybe some other video. You can look at my article. It's called The Straight Testimony. So here we see, be afraid of them because they have a false message. And they try to fight against the church. So the different thing, again, criticizing and rebuking, we saw that. God has not given them any such laborers. They would tear down that which God would restore by the Laodicean message. So in fact, they're not independent looks because they try to tear down. So it is the church members of the General Conference. They try to tear down the Laodicean message. And the Laodicean message, you can study this, is given by independent ministry. Most of the time, and church members too, mostly independent. So it is talking about leadership trying to turn down independent ministry. She says, God wounds only that He may heal, not cause to perish. The Lord lays upon no man a message that will discourage or dishearten the church. He reproves, rebukes, He chastens, but only that He may restore and approve at last. Or is it that the pamphlets denouncing the Seventh-day Adventist church as Babylon were scattered abroad everywhere? See, we continue, and we see this message that this person was giving is about the church in Babylon, which is false. At the very time, the church received the praise of the people of God. So there was Review and Herald, October 17, 1893. We almost finished. But we have to study verse after verse after verse to see the truth. See, this is almost everything about Ellen G. White that seems to say, do not become independent. You see, we have to study this verse, and we saw everyone is taken out of context by the leadership of the Seventh Adventists and many pastors. And when we come into the church, me too, I was taken by this and I believe this. I was made to believe no new organization means do not become independent. And I believe this. I believe because they taught me this and it was a lie from hell. It's not true. Ellen G. White is saying do not change the doctrines from before. And if the General Conference today teaches different from before, which is doing, then it is making a new organization. Let me see. Receiving the praying of the Spirit of God. How this man can be deceived. Imagine that the loud cry consistently calling. So we saw this one. Mark the whole tenor of this chapter and learn the lesson that it conveys to modern Israel. These things are written for our examples, upon whom the ends of the world are come. We see the unbelief and the stout resistance of some who have had great light. And although evidence has been piled upon evidence, they have kept themselves in stubborn resistance. The Lord sent messengers of warning and entreaty, messages of reproof and rebuke, and they have not been in vain. So look, she's saying here that God rebukes the church, the leadership. And she says here, the Lord has sent messages of warning and entreaty. So some people came, very likely also independent, and they have not been in vain. But you have never had a message that the Lord would disorganize the church. So you see, she says God has sent independent ministries, she says. God has sent independent ministers. But she says the ones that come and they say, we never had a message that the Lord should disorganize the church. Never had a prophecy concerning Babylon applied to the Seventh-day Adventist church. Or being informed that the loud cry consisted in calling God, people, to come out of her. For this is not God's plan concerning Israel. So he said this message that this man was giving, we saw earlier, Stanton, is not of God. But she's not saying every independent ministry is not of God. At times, with burning earnestness and words of terrible severity, Christ denounced the abominations that he saw in the church and in the world. He will not allow the people to be deceived by false claims to righteousness and sanctity. We are to unify, but not on the platform of error. That which has been said in the testimonies regarding the living temple and its misleading sentiments is not overdrawn. He, Jesus, will not accept that which has been done in bringing so much of a commercial spirit into the medical missionary work. Neither will he accept the Laodicean condition of the Medical Missionary Association. This association is not doing the work indicated by his name. It is not preparing a people to obtain a sound, healthy experience, which will stand the test of the judgment. Special testimony, BO247. And definition of stray, to move away aimlessly from a group or from the right course or place. So we saw there is no verse whatsoever in the Spirit of Prophecy that Ellen G. White says we should not be independent. If God calls someone, they should not obey the call of God. There is not one verse in the Bible saying the same. Saying God is not calling one here, one shepherd, one fisherman per here and here. No. In fact, most of the Bible is about that, and most of the Spirit of Prophecy is about this topic. But these verses we saw, you see there's not too many. Maybe we just saw them. We read this, maybe 20, we read how many? 20 verses, and none one of them is saying do not become independent. She's talking about the extreme of this man Stanton that says the whole of the General Conference needs to be dissolved and everybody is Babylon. No. So this is part one, brothers and sisters. Then we're going to see the verses about her saying about independent ministries, the book she wrote. I don't know if I have the pictures, maybe I deleted. And almost every Adventist I talk to, no one has read these books. So how can you expect these people to understand this message, brothers and sisters, when no one I read these books of Sister White about independent ministry? See, why would she write books about independent ministry and then say it's wrong? It makes no sense. It would be a total confusion. Like this one. Spirit of Prophecy, counseling on self-supporting work. Words of encouragement to self-supporting ministers or workers. Spalding and Megan collection. It does the sermon work, this one, the Madison School. The sermon work. Maybe there's more, brothers and sisters, but if you don't read these books, and even the leadership don't read the books, how could I expect to know the whole counsel of God? God bless you. Have a good day.